WhiskyJason here, whiskey from the viewpoint of an American in Germany, tasting rare and exotic whiskeys. Today I have something from Texas. Ranger Creek 44 caliber rye. Texas rye whiskey, the original Texas rye, aged a minimum of 2 years. All right. So I went to drinkrangercreek.com online and I found San Antonio's award-winning Distillery. I've never heard the word Distillery. So Distillery, yes. Handcrafted beer and whiskey made with lots of love, attention, and Texas attitude. Yay. So I am a big fan of Ranger Creek 36 caliber cast strength Texas whiskey. Bam! That is some of the best stuff I've had in a long time. Now, they also have a normal 36 bourbon. They have their 30, that's their small caliber series. They have something called Rimfire, which I've never heard of. And they have their 36 caliber white, and they have their 44 caliber rye. Now, I bought this bottle because it's brand new on the German market. So we have here the problem with 750 milliliters, so we have to actually put a sticker on there that's 700 milliliters. We don't change the content. We declare it to be 700 milliliters. Yay. And we got a guy over here in Germany, Mike Warner, or Havana, I'm sorry. He actually has Mike's Whiskey Handel, which is Mike's whiskey store down in Munich, and he imports this. So he also has some other good stuff, but he has the Ranger Creek stuff. So I just bought it. I bought it because it's like, hey, the 36 caliber is the best stuff I've had in a long time. This is going to be even better, right? Oh. So if I read the website, it says here, 44 caliber rye is 100% rye whiskey. Yay! Aged in our used bourbon barrels. Oh. The used barrels produce a more spirit-forward whiskey that allows the flavor of the grain to shine. I'm not really sure I want spirit forward. So now what's interesting is my bottle looks different than the bottles they have in the US. And now it is a 750 bottle, but down here, there's your label where there's handwritten stuff, batch number and bottle number and so on. I didn't get that. All right. So the third release in our small caliber series is an innovative take on the traditional American whiskey rye. Whiskey has a long history in the United States, even which includes George Washington operating the largest distillery of its time, also making rye back then. Rye has a distinct flavor that can be diverse and complex. It is often described as spicy or fruity and can manifest as cinnamon, nutmeg, mint, clove, or tobacco. All right, so those are good words. Now, I kind of read this and I went, all right, let's go for a worst whiskey watch. What's the worst rye whiskey I have on my shelf? I'm sorry to say this, but it's Whippersnapper. It's an Oregon spirit whiskey, so it's 63% corn, which in this case is White Dog from Kentucky, and 74 euros 50, a price which is way too high in my personal opinion. This runs around 40 euros over here in Germany, which is still a lot for it's between 6 and 3 month old whiskey. 6 month and 3 years old whiskey. All right. So they do make their own grain, their own rye whiskey up there in Oregon. Some of it's from the farm, some of it's bought, and some of it's in Pinot Noir, French oak cask. Some of it is in virgin oak cask. Some of it is in used bourbon cask. So they're doing a variety of different things. And it's very interesting to say the least. I am not a big fan of this, and yet it's much better than this. I'm sorry, guys. This has the cinnamon that a rye can have. This is almost for me like big red in a glass. You know that chewing gum, Big Red? Cinnamon all day long. I took the bottle, I was just reading. It's like, this has to be a flavored spirit. It has to be a flavored spirit. There's so much cinnamon. It's not flavored spirit as much I can tell. It says this is actually 79%. Not 76, 79% corn neutral spirits from Kentucky. And it is then 21 barley spirits distilled and bottled by Ransom Spirits in Sheridan, Oregon. Sorry. All right. So Canadian Texas versus Oregon whiskey here. Now, if I go here, I get the Big Red, I get the cinnamon, and when I go back to this, I get almost like a fresh grass cut, lawnmower grass cut. The weed eater grass cut, and when it's wet, it's a very damp, a type of green, a type of wet, a type of not the best moment in my life here when I try to enjoy the smell of this. Now it is 47%, which is nice, so it's 94 proof. That's very, very nice. Fermented, distilled, matured, and bottled by Ranger Creek Distilling in San Antonio, Texas. And so it can actually be called a certified Texas whiskey. Yay! So we have one of those nice little labels on here. I think that's with the Texas Whiskey Association, I think it's called. Beautiful, beautiful. I love that. There's a Texas Whiskey Trail. Love that. There's a lot of things going on in Texas that are just fantastic. Texas is a big place. Texas is bigger than Germany, but there's still a lot of distilleries going on over there. And I would love to go back to Texas one day, visit my grandfather, who's now 98. Got to get there soon. And my father and my uncle and my sister and my nephews and a lot of other people live down there in Dallas, Fort Worth area and so on. So it should be a possibility to do this one day. Again, I hope. All right, so on the nose, I've talked about this. On the palate, cheers. Now, if they're going for a spirit-forward, grain-driven thing, yes, there's very, very little cask influence here. Have I mentioned that I love the 36 caliber cask strength Ranger Creek bottling? I've had 2 bottles so far. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful stuff. This, they're trying to do something different. They did. Congratulations. Do I like it? No. Please do your due diligence before buying bottles. Just don't assume because the one bottle is this, the next bottle is going to be exactly the same. Of course not. They're trying different things. They're trying different things out. They're going for different flavor profiles. They're reaching different people here. And that's exactly what they should be doing. And dumb Jason just didn't research before he bought. It was like, oh, look, click. And it's, oh, okay, let's do my video. Let's research a little bit. It's like, oh, okay. Is it a bad whiskey? No. The finish, there's a sweetness, there's a honey moment, and there's a rye moment that actually goes on and on and on. It says here we recommend enjoying this sipping whiskey neat, on the rocks, or in an old-fashioned. I'm going to actually put a tiny little bit of water in here, see what happens. If it take it from its 47% down to about 42, 43%, maybe it opens up, maybe it gets a little bit smoother, a little bit creamier. Nope. Wow. Reminds me, I did about 4 years ago something from Cody Road. I think it's Iowa. Back then, they were a brand new distillery. I think their products were 2 years maybe old or whatever. I did not like it. It was very green. It was a rye as well. It just wasn't there what I wanted. I even mentioned that if you're at the urinals and there's those little stones you put in there to get rid of that citrus moment, to get rid of that pea stink or stank. That's what I got on the Cody Road, and that's a little bit what I'm getting here. A very, very bright, very, very yellow green type of moment, which I'm just not a great fan of. Sorry, guys. This is going to be a D minus, and value for money over here in Germany, 75 euros for this bottle. It's an F. Yeah, I can get Elijah Craig barrel proof plus an Elijah Craig. I can get 3 bottles of Wild Turkey 101 or 2 bottles of Wild Turkey and 1 bottle of Rare Breed for this. It's just way overpriced. Has to do with the tariffs, have to do with the distributor situation in Germany, and so on and so on and so on. just not worth it. Over here, the whippersnapper. I must admit, if you want Big Red in a glass, this might be the thing to go for. Uniquely different. Really, I thought that was flavored. It's not. Now, one tiny little thing. Bourbon is a protected geographical indicator. It's a protected brand all over the world. And so if it's a bourbon in the United States, it's a bourbon in Europe, it's a bourbon in Asia, it's a bourbon in South America. Protected. Rye whiskey, according to my information, is not. Rye whiskey, therefore, has to fulfill the European definition of a whiskey, which means 3 years. And so this says here, Ranger Creek 44 caliber rye whiskey. And if I were to be a tiny, tiny little bit of a bad person, I could actually maybe call up the office in Germany and say, hey, I think the label's wrong. Because there's the word whiskey here and aged a minimum of 2 years. If you had said an age minimum of 3 years, no problem. So maybe you have to call it your Texas rye in the future and not your Texas rye whiskey. Texas rye, no problem. There are no rules for Texas rye. There's only rules for whiskey. So tiny little tip there from a guy over here in Germany who's trying to learn how to import other brands over here and looking for things that we have problems with. And one of them is the rules for rye whiskey. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for subscribing. Thank you very much for sharing this video if you like. Other Texas brand products, great. The 36 caliber cast strength, if you can ever find it, magnificent. Whippersnapper, what is that? It's cinnamon in a glass, and it's a very, very different whiskey, to be honest. Okay. Thank you very much. All the best. See you soon. Whiskey Jason here. Bye-bye.